Strasbourg 1518, a woman danced herself to death in the street. Within a week, 34 others joined her. Doctors had no explanation. The medical consensus at the time was straightforward: mass hysteria, collective delusion, a psychological contagion that spread through the crowded streets of Strasbourg like any other epidemic. Physicians wrote treatises on the subject. The afflicted were weak-minded, prone to suggestion, vulnerable to the power of imagination. If 34 people danced until their feet bled and their bodies collapsed, it was because they'd been infected by an idea, not a pathogen. The explanation was tidy. It required no invisible agents, no unknown mechanisms. It asked only that we accept human weakness as the culprit. That consensus held for 500 years. Textbooks repeated it. Historians reinforced it. But the specifics of what actually happened in Strasbourg demand we look closer at what mass hysteria really is and whether it explains anything at all. July 1518. Frau Troffea, a woman in her mid-30s, stepped into the street near her home. She began to dance, not a waltz or a courtly measure, a violent, convulsive movement. Her feet struck the ground in rapid, rhythmic patterns. She was soaked in sweat within minutes. She didn't stop. By evening, her feet were blistered. By the next morning, blood had soaked through her shoes. She continued. Her neighbors called physicians. The physicians had no treatment. They prescribed rest. She couldn't rest. She danced. By July 14th, a week later, 34 people had joined her in the streets. They danced in unison, though none had coordinated. They moved with the same frantic energy, the same absence of control. Strasbourg had become a city of involuntary dancers, and no one understood why. The authorities responded with what seemed logical. They hired musicians. If the afflicted were compelled to dance, perhaps exhaustion would break the spell. Musicians played in the streets. The dancers moved faster. Some collapsed. Others kept moving. One woman died, then another. By September, over 100 people were dancing. The city banned music. It didn't help. The dancers continued in silence, their bodies moving to a rhythm only they could hear. Physicians gathered. They debated the cause: demonic possession, astrological influence, bad air from the river, punishment for sin. None of these explanations predicted what would happen next. The dancing didn't spread randomly. It clustered. Families were affected together. Neighborhoods saw simultaneous outbreaks. People in the same occupations, the same social circles, developed the condition within days of each other. And here's where the hysteria explanation begins to fracture. Mass hysteria doesn't kill, it distresses, it disables. But the Strasbourg dancers were suffering from something far more severe. Autopsies revealed swollen joints, inflamed muscles, neurological damage. These were physical injuries, not psychological ones. The clustering pattern points to something else entirely: environmental exposure, a shared source. Historians have long overlooked one crucial fact. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city of grain mills. The wheat stored in those mills contained ergot fungus. Ergot produces a compound called ergotamine. In concentrated doses, it causes convulsions, muscle spasms, hallucinations, vasospasms that cut off blood flow to extremities. It's the same compound that modern chemists would later synthesize into LSD. A contaminated grain shipment could poison an entire neighborhood at once. The clustering of cases, the physical damage to tissues, the seasonal timing: summer, when stored grain would be most susceptible to fungal growth, the geographic concentration around the mills and bakeries. Every detail aligns with ergot poisoning, not mass delusion. But there's a complication. Not everyone who consumed contaminated grain danced. Some fell ill with other symptoms. Some showed no symptoms at all. Ergotism is dose-dependent. Individual susceptibility varies. A person's psychological state matters too. Stress amplifies the effects. Fear intensifies the experience. So the truth is more complex than either explanation alone. The dancers weren't purely hysteric. They weren't purely poisoned. They were poisoned individuals in a state of extreme psychological distress, living in a city gripped by fear. The ergot created the capacity for convulsion. The desperation created the meaning. The outbreak ended as abruptly as it began. By the autumn of 1518, the dancing stopped. The afflicted recovered or didn't. Some retained permanent neurological damage. Others seemed to forget it had happened. The grain supplies were eventually replaced. The mills were cleaned. What matters now is what we learn from it. For centuries, we explained Strasbourg as proof of humanity's susceptibility to delusion. We were wrong. We mistook the container for the contents. The dancing was real. The physical damage was real. The poisoning was real. The fear was real. All of it together created something that defied easy categorization. It's a reminder that our explanations of historical events are always provisional. What we call hysteria might be poisoning. What we call delusion might be physiological crisis filtered through the lens of available meaning-making. The past is more strange and specific than our categories allow. Subscribe for more historical mysteries where the accepted explanation crumbles under scrutiny.